The living room was warm with the smell of pine and gingerbread. My niece, Lily, and nephew, Owen, were a whirlwind of wrapping paper and excited squeals. I sat on the couch, watching them with my heart full. I had used my entire holiday bonus to buy them exactly what they wanted. For Lily, a premium dollhouse she had been circling in catalogs for months. For Owen, the gaming console that all his friends had. I had wrapped them carefully, imagining their faces when they opened them. Lily reached for my carefully wrapped box first, the big one with the sparkly bow. But before her little hands could even pull out the dollhouse, my sister Elise swooped in. "Wow! Look what Mommy got you," she said, her voice sweet as syrup. She wrapped her arms around both kids, beaming. Lily and Owen's faces lit up like fireworks. "Thank you, Mommy," they shouted, hugging her tight. My smile froze on my face. I looked across the Christmas tree at Elise. She met my eyes and gave a tiny, dismissive shrug. That shrug said everything. It said this was normal. Expected. Right. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, needing space to breathe. I started washing dishes, my hands shaking slightly as I scrubbed a casserole pan. A few minutes later, Elise glided in, her heels clicking on the tile. She refilled her wine glass, took a sip, and turned to me. "Chloe, don't be upset," she said, her tone managing to be both soothing and condescending at the same time. "It is just that the kids see your little knitted hats and bookstore gift cards every year. This was big. I wanted them to think it came from someone who could really provide it." She paused, letting that sink in. "It is less confusing for them this way. You understand, right?" She patted my shoulder, and I felt the coldness of her diamond ring through my sweater. "It is for their image of me," she added, as if that explained everything. The sting was not from her words exactly. It was from the absolute certainty in her eyes that she was doing the right thing. That I was someone to be managed, and my feelings were an acceptable casualty in maintaining her perfect life. The drive home was silent except for the rhythmic swish of my windshield wipers. Fat snowflakes fell, blurring the festive lights on my neighbors' houses. I had always found comfort in my quiet life. My modest apartment. My sensible sedan. My practical wardrobe. I was not ashamed of any of it. But for the first time, the quiet contentment I had built for myself felt like a lie that others were telling about me. I was not poor. I had never been poor. But Elise had decided I was, and she had spent years convincing our entire family of that narrative. I thought about the confidential reports sitting on my laptop at home, the portfolios I managed, the quiet power I held in my professional world. A resolve hard and clear as ice crystallized inside me. This was the last Christmas Elise would get to define who I was. This was the last time I would let her steal my story. The windshield wipers kept their steady rhythm, and I made my decision. Everything was about to change. Monday morning, I walked into the serene, hushed offices of Sterling and Worth Wealth Management. The lobby had marble floors and soft classical music playing. Here, in this world, I was not poor Aunt Chloe. I was Ms. Whittaker, Senior Vice President. I had been with the firm for over a decade, working my way up through meticulous analysis and steady results. My clients were ultra-high net worth individuals who valued discretion over flash. People who had real wealth, not the appearance of it. My office was not huge, but it had a view of the city's skyline and commanded respect. My assistant, Paul, brought me a coffee the way I liked it. "Rough holiday?" he asked, clearly seeing something in my expression. I shook my head and managed a smile. "Just planning for the new year," I said. And I was planning. But my plans had just become deeply, intensely personal. I opened my laptop and started making a list. The first item was a phone call I needed to make to my attorney. During my lunch hour, I sat in my office with the door closed. I dialed my attorney, a man named Richard whom I had worked with for years on estate planning. My voice was calm and steady as I spoke. "Richard, I need to update my will and my transfer on death directives," I told him. I want to remove my sister, Elise Bancroft, as a beneficiary from everything. There was a pause on the line. Are you sure, Chloe? That is a significant change. I took a breath. I am absolutely sure. And I want to set up 2 educational trust funds. One for my niece, Lily, and one for my nephew, Owen. I specified the terms carefully. The money would be accessible only for tuition, books, and educational expenses. It could not be touched until they turned 18. And most importantly, it was completely untouchable by their parents. This is not about punishing the kids, I explained. It is about protecting them and redirecting my legacy away from their mother. Richard said he would have the paperwork ready by the end of the week. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. A week later, Paul knocked on my office door with an excited expression. Ms. Whittaker, we have a potential client inquiry. It is a big one. He handed me a file. The name on the cover made me pause. Arthur Bell. I knew that name. Everyone in wealth management knew that name. Arthur Bell was a renowned financial philosopher and author. His book, The Quiet Wealth, was a bestseller that had changed how people thought about money and success. And ironically, hilariously, my sister Elise had a dog-eared copy on her coffee table. She quoted it at parties, using phrases about authentic prosperity while wearing clothes she could not afford. The irony made me smile for the first time since Christmas. He is very private, Paul explained. He is looking for a firm that values discretion over drama. I think you might be perfect for this. I looked at the file, at the note requesting a phone consultation. I took a deep breath. Set up the call, I said. I will take this one personally. My first meeting with Arthur Bell was unlike any client meeting I had ever had. We did not talk about flashy returns or beating the market. We talked about sustainable growth, ethical investing, and building legacies that lasted generations. He was in his 60s, with kind eyes and a quiet intensity. I do not need someone to make me richer, Ms. Whittaker, he said during our video call. I need someone who understands that wealth is a tool, not a trophy. I found myself relaxing, speaking honestly about my philosophy. About how real wealth was quiet. About how it gave you freedom, not just things. You speak my language, he said finally, a small smile on his face. I think we will work well together. When he signed the contract making Sterling and Worth his primary wealth management firm, with me as his dedicated advisor, I knew this was more than a professional win. It felt like a validation of everything I was. Everything Elise had never bothered to see. In February, my phone rang with a number I recognized. Elise. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Chloe, darling, she said, her voice strained with fake cheer. You work with money, right? At that little firm of yours. I could hear her hesitation, the way she diminished my career even while asking for help. We are thinking of doing a kitchen renovation. Granite countertops, custom cabinets, the works. But the bank is being difficult about extending our line of credit. She laughed, but it sounded forced. You must know some tricks. Can you get me a meeting with your manager or something? Someone who can help us navigate this. I sat back in my chair, processing this. She was asking for a favor from the very world she thought I barely belonged to. The disconnect was staggering. Let me see what I can do, I said carefully. I will make some calls. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. An idea was forming. A perfect, poetic idea. I called Arthur Bell, not as a client, but as someone whose advice I trusted. I explained the situation carefully. My sister needed financial advice, but was pursuing a reckless path. She was asking me for help, but had no idea who I actually was or what I did. Arthur listened quietly. Sometimes, he said thoughtfully, the best financial lesson is not taught. It is witnessed. He paused. I do some consulting for First Mercantile Trust. It is a premier private bank. If your sister applies there for her loan, I could arrange to be present for the interview as a senior consultant. I understood what he was suggesting. She would not recognize you? I asked. He laughed. My book jacket photo is from 15 years ago. And people see what they expect to see. Your sister expects a banker. She will see a banker. We worked out the details. It felt like justice taking shape. Not cruel. Not vindictive. Just the truth, dressed up in a three-piece suit and asking pointed questions. 2 weeks later, Elise arrived at First Mercantile Trust wearing her most powerful blazer and her highest heels. I knew because Arthur had set up a discreet video link for me to watch from my office. She was ushered into a plush conference room where Arthur Bell waited, looking every bit the senior banking consultant. She did not recognize him. She smiled her brightest smile and shook his hand. Arthur asked her to sit and began reviewing her application. He asked blunt, direct questions about her debt, her spending habits, her home equity. Elise waved her hand dismissively at each concern. Our image is an investment, she insisted. We live in a good neighborhood. Our children go to the right schools. These things matter. Arthur's expression remained neutral, but I could see the assessment happening behind his eyes. He was taking her measure, and she was failing the test without even knowing it. Arthur steepled his fingers and looked at Elise directly. Mrs. Bancroft, I notice you cited The Quiet Wealth in your loan application. That is my book. Elise's eyes went wide. Oh my God. You're Arthur Bell? I love your work. She leaned forward, suddenly animated. I quote you all the time. Arthur nodded. Then perhaps you can tell me what you believe is the core principle of quiet wealth? Elise lit up, reciting a line she had memorized. It is about maintaining the perception of stability and success. About looking prosperous so opportunities come to you. Arthur shook his head slowly. No, Mrs. Bancroft. It is about the deliberate divorce of self-worth from external display. It is about knowing your value without needing others to see it. It appears you have missed the point entirely. He closed her file. The confusion on Elise's face was instant and total. She opened her mouth but could not find words. Your loan application is denied, Arthur said quietly. I would suggest you read the book again. More carefully this time. Elise left the bank and called me immediately. I was still in my office, the video link closed. Chloe. The bank was awful, she fumed. Some old guy lectured me like I was stupid. He did not know anything about our lifestyle, our needs. Her voice was rising. He acted like I did not understand money. Me? I read financial books. I asked what the consultant looked like. She described him, and it was unmistakably Arthur Bell. He said I missed the point of some book I love. Can you believe that? I made sympathetic sounds, but said nothing else. After we hung up, I sat in my office feeling a calm settle over me. The first stone had been dropped in Elise's pond. She had not even heard the splash. But the ripples were coming. They were absolutely coming. And there was nothing she could do to stop them now. A month later, I was having lunch with our mother when she mentioned casually that Elise and her husband Tom were cutting back a little. No more weekend trips to the vineyard. Lily's expensive ballet classes were suddenly too rigid and not the right fit. Owen's private tennis lessons had quietly stopped. I nodded and made appropriate sounds, but inside, I understood exactly what was happening. Elise's lifestyle was a house of cards built on lines of credit and borrowed money. The bank's rejection had been the first warning gust of wind. Now the whole structure was starting to sway. I felt a pang, not of satisfaction exactly, but of sadness for what was inevitable. Elise had built her entire identity on appearances. And when those appearances started to crumble, she would not know who she was underneath. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered Christmas Day and the feeling passed. At a family lunch in April, the strain was obvious. Elise was visibly stressed. Her hair was not as perfectly styled. Her outfit was nice, but not new. She snapped at Owen when he asked for dessert, then tried to cover it with a loud, forced laugh. She looked across the table at me, sitting calmly in my simple sweater, and her expression was almost resentful. Must be nice to have no pressure, Chloe, she said, her voice carrying an edge. No mortgage to worry about. No private school bills. No expectations. Our parents nodded sympathetically at her. Poor Elise, working so hard. Lucky Chloe, with her simple little life. I just stirred my iced tea and said nothing. But I was thinking about the pressure Elise felt. It was not from life. It was not from real responsibilities. It was from the fiction she had sold herself and everyone around her. And that fiction was starting to cost her everything. In May, our brother called me. Did you hear about Elise's party disaster? He asked. Apparently, she and Tom had gotten into a huge fight at a neighborhood gathering. About money. In front of everyone. The word foreclosure had been whispered. The perfect image was cracking, and everyone could see the strain underneath. People were talking. Speculating. Feeling sorry for them or judging them, depending on who you asked. My secret felt heavier in those moments. Part of me wanted to tell someone, anyone, the truth about who I was and what I did. But revealing it now would look like kicking her while she was down. And that was not what this was about. This was not about me winning. It was about her losing the power to define me. Truth has its own timing. I just had to wait for the right moment. And that moment was coming. In June, Elise showed up at my apartment unannounced. It was a Thursday evening, and I was making dinner when I heard the knock. I opened the door, and she was standing there with red-rimmed eyes. Chloe, I need help, she said, walking in without being invited. A real loan. Just to bridge us over. You must have savings, right? You live so simply. You must have something put away. She looked around my tidy, modest living room as if hoping to find evidence of hidden wealth. I can pay you back. Eventually. Her voice cracked on that last word. I felt a wave of sadness. Elise, I cannot give you a loan, I said gently. But I can help you make a budget. We can sit down and look at your expenses. She cut me off. A budget? Chloe, we are past budgets. I need money. I need help. Why are you being so selfish? She left angry, slamming my door. She saw my offer as an insult. She could not imagine that I was trying to help in the only way that would actually matter. I realized that night that Elise would never accept real help. She only wanted rescue. She wanted someone to give her money with no strings attached, no questions asked, no changes required. And I was never going to be that person. My sadness turned to solid resolve. I would not be her bailout. I doubled down on my work, focusing on Arthur Bell's portfolio and expanding my own charitable giving. I funneled money into a local toy drive, a family shelter, and a scholarship fund for low-income students. My wealth had a purpose. It was a tool to do good, to help people who genuinely needed it and were willing to do the work to change their situations. That purpose did not include enabling my sister's delusions. That felt harsh but true. And I made peace with it. In October, my mother called, her voice tight with worry. Chloe, honey, Elise's house is going into pre-foreclosure. They missed 3 mortgage payments. She paused. Your father and I do not have enough to help them. But you work at a bank, right? Could you talk to someone? Pull some strings. I closed my eyes. This was the hardest conversation I had ever had with my mother. Mom, I love Elise. But I cannot fix this. She made financial decisions that were not sustainable. Me giving her money will not solve the real problem. My mother was silent for a long moment. So you're just going to let her lose everything? I felt tears running down my face. I am not letting her do anything. These are consequences of her choices. And sometimes consequences are the only teacher that works. We hung up, and I sat on my couch crying. Not for Elise's situation, but for the sister I wished I had. The one who saw me clearly. That sister had never existed. A week before Thanksgiving, I received a formal invitation in the mail. It was on heavy cream cardstock with elegant calligraphy. Arthur Bell was hosting an intimate philanthropic dinner for his closest advisors and their families. It was at an exclusive private club, the kind of place that did not advertise and only existed through word of mouth. The invitation specifically requested my presence and said I could bring guests. It was the most prestigious invitation of my career, a public acknowledgement of my standing in Arthur's inner circle. I held the invitation and thought about who I could bring. My parents would be confused. My brother would ask too many questions. And Elise? I laughed out loud, alone in my apartment. There was absolutely no way I was bringing Elise. This was mine. My achievement. My world. And she had no place in it. As Christmas decorations went up around the city, I noticed something. Elise's social media had gone silent. No posts about tree trimming parties. No photos of the kids in matching designer pajamas. No carefully staged shots of expensive gifts wrapped under a perfect tree. The silence was louder than any of her previous boasts had been. I put up my own small tree in my apartment, decorating it with simple ornaments I had collected over the years. And I thought about the trust funds I had set up. They were growing quietly, accumulating value. When Lily and Owen turned 18, they would have fully funded college educations waiting for them. Money their mother could not touch, could not spend, could not take credit for. That was my real Christmas preparation. Protecting them, giving them opportunities, making sure my legacy went to the right place. It was December 23rd. I was in my apartment, wrapping gifts for my family. Real, thoughtful gifts. A book my father had mentioned wanting. A cashmere scarf for my mother. Educational games for Lily and Owen. I was almost finished when my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, thinking it was a charity robocall. But something made me answer. Hello, I said, tucking the phone under my chin while I tied a ribbon. Am I speaking to Chloe Whittaker? A professional, polite male voice asked. Yes, this is she, I replied, only half paying attention. Ms. Whittaker, my name is Michael Ross. I am the account manager for the Bancroft family portfolio at First Mercantile Trust. My hands froze. The ribbon fell from my fingers. We have a significant situation, he continued, and you are listed as the secondary contact and power of attorney for your niece and nephew's custodial accounts. My breath caught in my throat. Elise must have put me down years ago, back when we still had a normal relationship. What situation? I asked, my voice suddenly tight. Michael's voice was grave and professional. We detected a series of irregular withdrawal attempts from the children's custodial savings accounts by Mrs. Bancroft. Large sums, significantly over the normal withdrawal limits. When we questioned her, she claimed it was for holiday expenses. But the amounts flagged in our fraud detection system. He paused. When we denied the withdrawals, Mrs. Bancroft became quite agitated. She made several statements that concerned us. My heart was pounding. What kind of statements? Michael cleared his throat. She insisted she had the right to the money because, and I quote, Aunt Chloe is poor and will never contribute to these accounts anyway. I am their mother. I provide everything. The world tilted sideways. She had tried to steal from her own children, from accounts that were meant for their future. And she had done it while throwing my name around, using her lie about me to justify theft. Ms. Whittaker, Michael continued, given that comment, I looked up your name in our internal system. I saw that you are a significant private client with us, which made Mrs. Bancroft's statement quite puzzling. His tone suggested he understood exactly what was happening, that he had seen through all of it. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I sat in Michael Ross's office at First Mercantile Trust. The building was quiet, most people already off for the holiday. Michael was a kind man in his 50s, professional and clearly uncomfortable with the situation. He showed me the paperwork. Elise had tried to withdraw $30,000 from Lily's account and $25,000 from Owen's account. Money that had been slowly accumulating from gifts from grandparents and family members over the years. The accounts are safe, Michael assured me. We stopped the withdrawals. But given the attempted fraud and Mrs. Bancroft's derogatory statement about you, we are required to file a confidential report. He slid another document toward me. The accounts will be permanently locked until the children reach 18 years of age. Only you, as the verified ethical secondary contact, will be able to authorize any educational releases before then. I nodded, unable to speak. Michael continued, more gently. Additionally, due to the financial instability the situation revealed, the bank is calling the home equity line of credit on the Bancroft residence. The foreclosure will proceed. Christmas Day was quiet at my parents' house. Elise and her family were not there. Mom was crying softly in the kitchen. Dad sat in his chair, looking older than I had ever seen him. I had explained everything to them the night before. Not cruelly, but honestly. The attempted theft. The lies about me. The financial reality they had never seen. I did not know, my mother kept saying. I did not know what she was doing. Or who you really were. I gave them the gifts I had wrapped. My father opened his book and smiled sadly. My mother held the cashmere scarf like it was precious. You have always been so generous, she said. We just never noticed. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. A notification from Sterling and Worth. My year-end bonus had been deposited. I looked at the number. It was more than Elise had tried to steal from her children. More than she had probably made in the last year. I opened my banking app and transferred a significant portion directly to the family shelter in our town. In the notes section, I wrote, for Christmas 2026. In honor of quiet generosity. I drove home as the sun was setting. The streets were dark and quiet, most families tucked inside their warm houses. I thought about revenge and whether this had been it. I decided it had not been. Revenge implied I had acted against Elise. But I had not. I had simply stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own choices. I had stopped letting her define me. I had stopped making myself small so she could feel big. The truth, once I set it free, had done its own work. I pulled into my parking spot and sat in the car for a moment. My wealth was not in my bank account that night, though that was substantial. It was in the peace of my quiet car. It was in the love I had for Lily and Owen, and the future I had secured for them. It was in the work I did, helping clients build real legacies. It was in the freedom to be exactly who I was without needing anyone's permission or recognition. My worth had never been Elise's to define. And now, finally, I understood that completely. I got out of my car and walked up to my apartment. Inside, my small tree glowed with simple white lights. I made myself tea and sat on my couch, looking out at the city. This was enough. I was enough. And that was the only gift I had ever really needed.